Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm the CEO of Neuheights. Neuheights is a neuroceutical company, one of the first based in the UK. My role there is to secure the sales and secure the investment. I'm part of the Inspiring Leadership series. And on that note, I'll hand you over to our host, Jonathan Bowman-Perks, to carry on.
Thank you very much indeed, Mohammed. Lovely to have you on the series. And I've always been very interested in this area of nutrition, health, well-being. And we had a fascinating conversation before we started this one about how difficult it is to get nutrients into the body and the way you've designed something which can do that. And I'm really excited for you and for your team with that. And the fact that you're a self-starting entrepreneur and now people are starting to invest in you and this great idea. So well done on that.
Thank you.
Would you tell us a bit more about your current role in the business? And let's go then after that, maybe just make 2 or 3 minutes to tell us about that. And then let's go back to your life journey and how you began out to become the man you are now doing this amazing work. So firstly, tell us about what's going on in your current role.
Okay, so in my current role, the majority of my time is spent securing investment, really. We need that to get to the next level of where we want to be. So in the last 6 months, I have probably spoken to at least 50 investors of some shape or form. And we're working on about a 10% where we're getting to the point where maybe 2 or 3 of those are now ready to invest in us. And that's a good place to be. I've also had to build the team. And it's very hard to build a team when it's just a concept, because a lot of people have a lot of other things to do in their life. So I've had to explain that we are at this point in our journey. We're getting close to the investment. And when that happens, everybody who's had faith in me and in the concept, I will have them on board and I will reward them very, very well as well.
That's a really good way of doing it. And I do think for people to have skin in the game, and that's the way I tend to do it with some of the startup companies I work with. I have a retainer, but I also have skin in the game, because if they do well, because I've helped them lead, we all do well. But if they bomb, it's probably partly my fault for not helping them have a good team around them and working together. But take me back now to the young Mohammed, family and background, and the values that you have today and where they came from, whether parents, teachers, whatever. Just 10 minutes, take me through a bit of your life story. I'm interested.
So I had to think about this. I had a very happy, upbringing when I was a child. I'm not one of those who would say I had it rough, or even if I did, I didn't notice it, because I was always a happy kind of child when I was growing up. All I can remember when I was growing up in a household of 7, including myself, there was 7 siblings. So there's five sisters and myself and my other brother. So there was 2 brothers and 5 sisters. It was a big, happy, noisy household. And as with everything else, there were days when I'd get on with sister number 2 and not with sister number 3, and et cetera, et cetera. And we just cracked on. I was never, ever, I can't ever been mollycoddled by my mum or my sisters. Never with my sisters, no chance. I was made to work like everybody else. And I've got 3 elder sisters, and they really put me through the mill. And they turned me into the person I am now, which is, I don't do the macho thing. It's just not something part of me. And we were always taught to work hard. That was something that my mum used to instill within us. Considering she'd never been to university, school, or anything, she always insisted that we worked hard. Worked hard. And the other one was just be honest. Don't try and be something that you're not, and certainly don't make up things that you're not either. Just be honest. So life for me was it was a household where you didn't really have places to go and be by yourself. There was just too many people there. There was 9 people in a household. We had 6 bedrooms. Everybody had somewhere, where you'd think that they could go to, but you couldn't. And then life for me turned slightly upside down when my dad was diagnosed with, he had tuberculosis before I was born, and and then it turned into a full-blown respiratory cardiac problem. And I was 10 when that started. By 15, he'd passed away. But for those 5 years in between, it just felt like a lodger living in the house. He didn't participate in many things with me. I almost became head of household when I was 10, 11. And when he did pass away, I had to look after my mum and 2 younger sisters. Did I think of it as a burden? No. I look back on it now, and it certainly sharpened me when it comes to work and what have you. Because I remember I would have to, when I was 15, my dad had secured a lot of loans against the house when he was trying to set up his business and what have you. And I remember I'd have to miss school and go and sit with solicitors. Now, this is a 15-year-old trying to negotiate to make sure his assets were kept, and we had a roof over our house because he'd used the house as being the collateral. So when I used to tell my teachers, then they never used to believe me. They used to think I've just skived off school. And when I used to tell them, no, I'm sitting with a solicitor to make sure we do have a house so I can come to school. So I was head of household when I was 15. I had 2 younger sisters I had to look after. My mom, bless her, she always tried to learn English as best she can, and she was really good at it. But I was the one who was, press gang to go into solicitors and what have you. So from 15 onwards, I've known about litigation, legislation, all those things. So
wow,
I never thought it was going to be something that structured my life, but it did. It did. I think when I was 16, I decided to go to sixth form. I don't know why. I mean, I think it was just the thing to do at the time. And I was always good at football, but I never thought that football would come knocking on my door until I had a sixth form match. And I remember I was playing out of position. I normally used to play midfield, but they put me as a wing back. And my attitude towards people I used to play football with at the time was, if you can't mix it with everybody, don't bother turning up. I mean, you're just a body on the pitch. I don't need you. And I reluctantly went to wing back, and I remember I had the best game I ever played, and I was actually marking the guy who was then the UK schools 110-meter hurdles champion, and he didn't get a look in, didn't get a sniff, because I was so wound up. I was let loose onto a pitch, and I was so wound up that he never got a look in. And in those days, you got to remember 35 years ago, you could clatter somebody and put him, ball, and everybody into the stand, and I did. And from there, I got asked to come down to West Bromwich Albion, and I didn't know at the time I was the only Asian ever to go to do that, even a trial. I was the first one to even get a trial with a team. So football for the next couple of years played a part in my life. But the one thing I do regret is I wish I'd had a mentor to help me through the football, because during the 80s, you can imagine that it was tough being of my ethnicity. It wasn't easy. And I couldn't relate to anybody. There's nobody I met in 4 years of playing that I could relate to. And I did go off the rails a little bit. I got a bit arrogant when I went to Germany to play football, and they wanted to put me in the second team, which is it's only now I know it's the norm to go into the second team. But for me, it felt as though I'm a failure. I mean, I've come all the way from England to go and sit in the second team. I'm not going to do that. So I went on strike. As a 19-year-old, I went on strike. And, if I'd known what I know now, I would have said to my younger self, look, it's only 12 weeks and they'll put you in the first team. Don't mess it up. So I've had to learn through things like that, but I don't see it as a disappointment. I don't see it as, I don't see it as, if this, but that. It happened, so what? And those sort of experiences forged who I was, and that's who I've been. I remember when I was 17, I left school with 1 O level, and that was maths, because that's the only subject I really liked. And I had to retake them the next year at sixth form. And the day that I had to sit 3 exams, was the day that I had to at 17 bury my sister. She'd been hit in a road traffic accident, and I remember
sorry.
I was given the you know, when I think about it now, I think I don't know how the 17-year-old did it, because I couldn't do it now. I was given the option of either sitting 9 hours of exams after the funeral or coming back in November. And in my head, I said, look, I'm not coming back in November. I mean, I've set my mind to do them now. So I sat exams from 12 o'clock until 9:30 at night. And I passed them all. So there was something in that 17-year-old's grit that I look at now and I think, that's what I need in my business. I need that grit. Because he's long gone, but I can still use that, whatever that little bit of passion that a middle-aged person can use. So I wouldn't say there was one absolute turning point in my life, but there were loads of those, loads. I mean, what I say to myself is, I don't know how that 20-year-old did that. I don't know how that 17-year-old did that. I don't know how that 15-year-old, it doesn't feel like it's me. I don't think it's me. It's somebody else. I think the reason why this came up was, I remember somebody giving a talk about, focus and what have you. And somebody asked for an example, and I was with somebody and she said, well, give an example. I went, how would you deal with being 17 and having to sit 3 exams, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, and at 2 hours before that, you were burying your sister? And he was like, I remember the whole auditorium went quiet. They went, right, let's get on to the next one.
but that is just, I just want to acknowledge it. I cannot imagine how tough that is. And having just lost a week ago my brother who died, it's a very, very tough time. What about the journey before Nueheights and you started this business? What other things have given you good business experience?
So I didn't, one of the things I wanted to do was, I didn't want to have a normal job until I was 30. Normal for me was office work, suit and tie, 9 to 5, yada, yada, yada. So I did all sorts of weird things before that. I played football, and then I wanted to join the military, and then I did some other weird jobs. And then at 29, I remember I thought, right, I'm getting close to that 30, and I've got to stick to my principles. And I've always tried to stick to things that I've set out. So I ended up doing a postgrad in telecoms and physics. And I've never done telecoms in my life. I don't even have an undergrad in science. I have it in economics. It's got nothing to do with science. I remember I went for my university interview, and the course director turned around to me and says, do you know what? In 30 years of doing this course, I've never had somebody with your background. He said you've not done computer science, you've not done engineering, and you haven't done maths, and you haven't done physics. And I remember he took my application, he chuckled, and he says, I'm about to retire next year. I'm going to let you on for a laugh. And he let me on. I went through it. I ended up working at BT. They put me on the graduate scheme there. And it was in their engineering department out in Ipswich. And I remember somebody said to me, he said, do you know you're the only person ever to work here who doesn't have a science background? And you know what? That inspired me, because I met somebody who motivated me to the point where I was reading probably 2 books a week on engineering.
Wow.
And I got through the ranks, and I ended up being really good at what I did. And I got headhunted by a few companies in the US, and I ended up working in Silicon Valley. And I worked in telecoms at quite senior positions. I went from management to director to VP to CTO. And then at 2017, I had an epiphany moment on a flight between here and Dubai, I think it was. Yeah, Dubai. And I thought, is this my lot? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And I looked at it, I thought, I enjoy my work, but does it really give me that motivation to get up in the morning and do a bit more and focus in on things? And I had to be honest, and I thought, it doesn't. It doesn't. It was good while it lasted. I went to Silicon Valley, saw all the things that I ever wanted to see, and now I needed to do something else. And I remember I took a leap of faith. I gave up a very good career, and I started off at rock bottom. I had to do a course. I did a postgrad course in sports science to learn a bit more about the area I'm going to go into. I ended up looking after both my daughters. Ended up living with me. So I'm a single parent, no job, no career, no nothing. I'm late 40s. You know, most of my friends thought you're a nutcase. You're an absolute nutter to do that. I mean, you must have you. One of my friends even said to me, he says, "You know those nutraceuticals you're making? You should start taking them before you make a decision like that again." And I looked at it and I thought, I've always managed to, with help from him upstairs, always land on my feet. This is another one. Just crack on. Just do it. And I had to think about my younger days when I was doing sports science. I had to learn about what made me tick when I was younger, and I used to take risks. I took a lot of risks. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. You know, some of them made me lots of money, some of them made me no money, some of them almost bankrupted me. But you have to take risks. And I realized that that's the biggest essence of my younger years. I took risks. You know, and I ended up where I am now. And it's tough, yes, but would I change it? No.
Well, that's brilliant. And let's have a look at some of the quick fire questions I'd like to ask you, which is like, firstly, darkest moments and proudest moments, and what you learned from each of those two imposters.
The darkest moments in life was the kind of deaths I had to deal with, people around me. They were everything. I had a close friend who was stabbed to death. I had a sister who was run over by a drunk driver. I had people who I never thought would die that way, died cardiac arrest, very young age. I always felt when they left, I felt alone. And I almost felt jealous that they've gone, because I'm here now all by myself again. This is not fair. You know, that thing used to go through my head. It's not fair. But when I look back on it, I think it was meant to be. It was absolutely fair, because I learned so much from those people that it was incredible. So those were dark days, if you want to put it that way. Mm-hmm. One of the things I took from those things was, when I meet somebody, I'd rather have 2 years, 3 years, 4 years of really good getting to know this person and them adding to my life than a lifetime with somebody who's just boring. Mm-hmm. So that was some the highest, proudest, without a shadow of a doubt. And you know, most people think, how can you put that one down? It was being a dad. And then I got it twice. So it was double whammy. Yeah. It was double whammy. Nothing gets close to it. Nothing gets close to it. And I remember somebody saying to me, he says, when they give that 2.5 kilograms in your hand, your life will just change. And I went, no. I'll still do this. Completely changed. Yeah. My whole focus was like, all right, I just need to finish this work. I need to get home. I want to get home. I need to get home. And yeah, proudest day being a dad, without a shadow of a doubt.
How old are your two daughters now?
Youngest one's 18 and the eldest one's 22.
Well, that's great. Well, I relate to that. I've got two daughters as well, and a stepdaughter and a stepson. Yep. And they're all 26 to 29. And we just married one of our daughters on Sunday. So special day.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thinking of you at that age, when you were 18, what bit of advice would you give to the young 18-year-old Mohammed Khan, knowing what you know now? Yeah. What bit of advice, if there was one bit of wisdom you'd give on to other young people listening now?
The one mantra I would give, if I could give to that 17, 18-year-old, was listen and have patience. Listen, just listen. The world's not against you. You might have been wounded when you were younger with what happened to your dad and you felt resentful, but there are good people out there. And the other one is have patience. If I could be the mentor to my 19-year-old who went to Germany to play football and went on strike, I'd say, look, what's 12 weeks in a 15-year career? Nothing. Nothing. But he's long gone. But that patience and listen, that's it.
Yeah, great advice. Great wisdom. I wish I'd taken similar advice myself at that age. MQ is the first of the 8 components of what makes high-performing leaders as part of our inspiring leadership work in our book, Inspiring Leadership Lessons from My Life, and my wife's book on inspiring women leaders. MQ, what fundamental values do you aspire to live by? So it's moral quotient.
Yeah.
If you have a top 3, what are your top 3? And what happened when you let them slip, and how did you get yourself back again?
The first one for me is honesty. It has to be. The second one is hard work. And then the last one is loyalty. If you do those 3, even if it doesn't work, nobody can say that you didn't try.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I haven't done the honesty, or I've been put in a predicament that I've got to pick right from wrong. Whenever I've even thought about doing the other one, I remember it was like, I don't think I can live with myself. You know, literally. I mean, many years ago, even when I was doing high tech, I used to do entrepreneurial things. I'd set up businesses with friends and what have you. And I remember this one particular business where we were asked to do we were asked to invest in a company that makes barrels for rifles. And he'd had something like £8 million worth of orders on the table. And initially he'd said to us that this business was just, you know, sporting and, you know, clay pigeon shooting. And I was happy with that. And then he mentioned, when we did the due diligence, 90% of that business was arms dealing with militaries around the world. And I remember looking at it thinking, I don't feel comfortable with this. I really don't feel comfortable. I don't really want to make a barrel which shoots a round that kills a child in some faraway place. I may never see that happen. But for me, I just thought, I can't do this. I remember saying it to a friend of mine. I said, I don't want to invest. And he said, but they've got 8 million on their books already. We only have to invest like $500,000. I went, to me, it didn't feel right. And from an honesty point of view, I had to be honest to myself. And I didn't. And I tell this story now, at dinner parties, and they laugh. And they said, well, it was worth like 15 million. Yeah, it would have worth been 15 million after like a year. And we had 8 million on the books. Possible. Well, he had sales. I mean, I saw them. I went, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, I think, as they say, a lady or a gentleman is someone who knows what they stand for and what they'll not fall for.
Yeah.
And I respect you for that. Next one round, PQ, which is purpose, meaning and purpose. Yep. So why do you do what you're doing now? And what's your dharma? What's your calling? What's your vocation? What is it that makes you do what you do?
We've had a long tradition in my family, on my dad's side and my mom's side, who've been in the military. And my brother was in the Air Force. So for me, my calling has always been something to help others in a very structured, planned way. I was always told that. Plan your day. That's it. Even if you know the world's going to end, plan your day. That's it. And then execute on that plan. And just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And then eventually something will happen. And for me, my calling is, I like working with other people. I really do. I get most of my, people think, oh, you must get a real good buzz from working at Nueheights, making those nutraceuticals. I get a buzz when somebody who has introduced me to somebody else and said, oh, he's one of the best nutraceutical designers on the planet, and he's a top footballer. And he says that to me, and I went, oh, okay. It's not something that I go out to get. So that's why I like working with people. And the other one is I love mentoring and getting the best out of somebody. I've had the privilege of coaching some really good athletes, and it's fun that years after you've finished coaching them, when you go to an awards dinner and they ask you to sit on the head table, and then people ask you, say, who's that? Because all the top athletes are talking to you, and they go, and you can hear people whispering, who's that? And that's because I dedicated time And I knew that there was a raw material that could be really good at what they did.
Brilliant.
I mean, that's the combination. You give time and there's raw material.
Yeah. Well, that from the athletes that you've helped and your own footballing career, health quotient is the next one. So mental and physical health and well-being, which of course is the area now moved into.
Yep.
What's your top advice on mental health, physical health, and well-being?
For mental health, one of the biggest ones that we found when I had to do sports psychology and sports science, as part of sports science, routine. You need a routine in your life. You have to have a routine. The reason why routines work is whenever you're feeling a bit down, there's something that you have to do in that day. There's something you have to go and address. There's something needs to be done, and it takes your mind off things that are beyond your control. They're things that are there, but are not going to help in any shape or form. Like worrying has no real health value at all. Worrying, anxiety is like a friend of mine said. He said anxiety is thinking too much of the future and not addressing the present, and depression is thinking too much of the past without addressing the present. So you need to live in the present. You need to live in here and now. So that's one on the mental health. On the physical, even on days when you're not feeling good, go and do that 20-minute walk. Even if it's raining, snowing, whatever, just get that thing done. And it will become part of a routine. And it will feel as though the same as those who drink coffee or who binge on chocolate or whatever they do. It becomes the norm for them to do every day. And that's what you want. I looked at this question earlier today and I thought, why is it that I've trained almost every day since I was 16? And it was twofold. A, it helped me stay focused so I didn't go down a slippery slope, which I could have. And B, I actually feel really good after I've exercised. And it's just the norm now. It's just the norm. For when it comes to well-being, I would look at one of the things we always say is it's easier to add to a diet than to take away. So instead of you taking away things which you might not think are healthy, add something which is. Over a period of time, you will naturally just get rid of the ones that are not. And that's the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. For me now, hitting like middle age and pretty much sit behind a desk all day. One of the things I always do is I try and only have 2 meals a day. Because I worked out that even 2,800 calories for me sitting behind a desk, the likelihood is I'm not going to be able to burn all that off. So I might as well restrict it, and I feel a lot better for it. So those are my tips.
Great advice. No, I've done 150 days of intermittent fasting, which essentially I miss out breakfast. And first meal of the day is around about 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, which is a really good, healthy, fully nutritional lunch with some fish and lots of vegetables and maybe some rice, and then a good evening meal, all finished ideally by about 7:30, so that you're not sleeping on that. No, great stuff. Okay, so moving on to the next quick fire question. We're going to do emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence. Emotional intelligence. What would be your top tip about building rapport with people? You're having to get people to relate to you, to buy into who you are and what you're doing.
One of the things I found in all of the, whether I work for somebody else or I'm doing Neuheights or I've worked at some of the other businesses I've set up, bring people in at the early stage. Bring them in and explain what the vision is. So everybody knows that this is what we're going for. If there's any objections, say it now. I always run an open ship. If you have an issue, just say it. And I'll give you a classic example. I've had this recently with Nueheights, where one of the members of the team, I thought was seeing things in a different way to everybody else. What I realized was it was because I hadn't explained a particular aspect of the business. So he had to make it up himself, thinking, I think it's this. But the reality was it wasn't. So one of the things I always say, open house. And if you can't take criticism, don't bother becoming a CEO. Just don't, because you'll end up being almost an autocratic leader. It's just your way or the highway. Forget it. I take regular advice from everybody before I make a decision on any aspect of Nueheights, any. And we've turned down investments from big places because it didn't fit with our ethos. And I'll give you a classic one. When I first started looking for funding for Nueheights, I looked at it as my tech days, and I was looking at it from very much like a mercenary. 3 years and I'm out of here. My team convinced me that I should make it that other members of their family, my family, could work there. And they said, why don't you just become a chairman when you want to leave? You'll get your salary, they'll give you your bonuses, and we can run it. And I went, I never, if I didn't have that view of changing, it would have been mercenary. 3 years and we're out of here. And I remember the youngest member of my chief scientist, she's only 28. She said, what will I do after 3 years when you sold up shop? And I looked, I went, well, I'll give you 50 million. What more do you want? She goes, but I want to work. I enjoy it. And I went, well, you can go and set up your own company with 50 million. She goes, I like working with you guys. And then it dawned on me. Maybe I should build something further down the line.
Yeah, no, that's great. Which takes me on nicely to the next one, which is cultural or collective intelligence, making the most of the group you have, but also with the tough experiences you had in those 80s with racism, the whole area of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and creating a healthy, diverse culture. What's your top tip here?
So I was always taught from when I was younger in my life that you treat everybody with respect, regardless. My mum would never stand for it if I'd come out with any sort of diversity stance against something which I knew was right, but I just want to be awkward. And racism, no chance. I would get fried in my house, literally. I think the best way that I found to become culturally aware with other people's cultures was when I traveled. I've visited 60 countries in my life. I've enjoyed every single one of them. Everything good from that culture, I've taken on board, made my culture better. Anything bad in my culture, I've got rid of it. And that makes me, when I speak to other people now, I always try and speak with a level of equality first. And then, I owe you respect because you're better than me. And the other thing is, whenever I look to build a team, I always build it on, I have a gap, I need to fill it. I don't care where that person comes from. I literally do not care. I did have one particular investor who said to me, he says, about inclusion and diversity, he said, we love the idea, but there's something wrong with the team. I went, what's wrong with the team? They're handpicked, they know what they're doing, they're not juveniles. And he said, maybe we should take this offline. I went, okay, fine, whatever. So we had a conversation afterwards, and he said, we'd love to invest, but there's just something wrong here. I went, okay, let's not kid about. Tell me exactly what the issue is. And he said, okay, we would like to bring in a white middle-class Caucasian to run your business, and we would like to bring a chief scientist to do the same as well, with the same background. And we want you to become I think it was advisory formulator. And he said, we want to sack your chief scientist because she doesn't fit the bill. Now, my core team at Nueheights there's myself, there's Andy, who's my advisor. He's been in corporate for years. I've got Peter, who's been the CEO of many startups out of Oxford University. I've got Dr. Rahmani, who's just finished doing a PhD in encapsulation of insulin. And I've got Dr. Raj, who used to work for some of the biggest companies around the world, people like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Cadbury's, etc. I said, you can't get a better team for what we need. But I was told to shift it. And the remit was, if you shift these people out, we'll give you the investment. I went back to my team and I said, I don't care what you guys say, I'm not doing it. I'd sooner sit on the street as a pauper than take that deal. And I remember I remember one of the people in the team said to me, she said, "Are you really seriously?" I went, "Yeah." It does. I said, "I've walked away from bigger deals than this. I'm not gonna shift my stance on diversity and equality just because somebody doesn't like the color of the skin. That doesn't work."
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, I remember I had to write a letter through my solicitor, and in a nice way, it says, "Crack on. We don't want to invest. Or we don't need your investment. We're okay." Because I've stuck to that stance and I've been honest and upfront with all my team, we've got to a point now where we're close to starting, which is unbelievable in less than 6 months.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and well done on that. And that's my next question really was, you're close to starting in less than 6 months from startup. What have you learned through all the different jobs you've done about one tip about resilience?
Get up every morning, write down all your tasks, and crack on. There you go. Just crack on. And when you get a disappointment, I know this is a cliche. It's not personal. Crack on.
Yeah.
Literally. Don't let it affect you. Become very thick-skinned to it. Don't try and psychoanalyze what somebody said to you. Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. You'll go completely bonkers if you do.
Yeah. No, great advice. Okay. Next one, brand. When was the last time you've had some 360 feedback from about 20 different people?
About 5 years ago when I first left.
Okay.
I had it from, I asked everybody at the time. I got the too focused to the point it's scary. Ruthless was one that somebody said to me. Loyal was people who were part of the team who I kept. What was the other one? Big softy was what some of the people I asked. They said he's got this hard exterior persona, but inside he's like blinking. Yeah, he's like melting chocolate. I mean, that's the reason why that happened was because I used to do scouts and I did a number of voluntary work and that, and I'd asked these people honest opinion about me where I could improve on that, and they said, "Oh, explain it a bit better, not so linear." And I'd think, well, how many times can I explain the same thing before you don't get? I mean, you're just not getting it. And then in conversation, somebody said to me, they said they saw me with my daughters, and we were putting up tents. And I remember saying to somebody, I said, "Look, you got to get these tents up and running, man, because you've got to get everything done. There are people depending on you. There are children depending on you." And then 2 minutes later, I was hugging and kissing my daughters. And then everybody said, "Oh, he thinks he's ruthless, but he's just a big softy."
That's a nice touch, though. And which takes me on to my next one, which is legacy. What would you, after you died, and you've seen many of your family die, and it's been tough, what would you like your legacy? How would you like people to describe you when you're gone?
I had to think about this, and I was thinking, what would be the best legacy? It's actually at my funeral, when all these weird people who I've worked with, who I've helped, mentored, coached, etc., and they turn up, and people are going to say, "Where did you meet him?" Or how did he get to meet them? And then the other one is just leave things that it's like the more you help people, the more I've mentored people, worked with people, I may not have been able to give them 100% of my time because it's hard when you're a parent and you got children and all the rest of it. But just if they could just say that, yeah, he was okay, he was all right, he helped, he was okay. As a legacy, I'm not looking for statues, monuments, and all this other nonsense. Just that is cool.
Yeah, that's great. No, I get that. And what about, thank you for that. So that's sort of around the Inspiring Leadership Compass. What about teams that you've been in? Football has teams, businesses have teams. You've been in high-tech companies, you've been a CTO, you've been a VP. What have you done to take toxic teams and turn them around and make them into healthier teams?
Regardless, the dynamics of a team they're not always going to be like you. And if they're all like you, then you're not going to work. It's going to be the weirdest kind of team you've ever come across. So you are going to get toxic characters in there. You're going to get people who are just there to cause problems. And you have to be ruthless at times. Whenever I've worked in a team where there's somebody who's constantly causing friction for no apparent reason, the first thing I'd ask is, I've always tried to do one-to-ones. I don't like using the term one-to-ones because that means it's structured, set, etc. I've always tried to ring them and say, look, what exactly is happening? Because what I've found is a lot of friction, a lot of confrontational stances that people may have, it's because something's happening in their personal life. Something's happening which they can't stop. So it's a bit like, I've got to argue here, but I can't, so I'll argue over there. As long as I'm arguing, I don't care. So I always ask them, because I've been through that. I've been through that where you transferable stress, as they call it. So I get to see what's happening. If I can help reduce the stress in some shape or form, make it work better, I'll even give them time off. I'll work with them. If after all of that I can't do anything, then I'll ask the $64,000 question: is, do you think this is the right place to work? Do you think, after everything we've tried to do, and it's not a knee-jerk reaction, do you think either this is not the right place for you to work, or do you think that we could never ever see eye to eye? So it's better that we do a parting of the wave now on good terms. And I've had to do that. I've had to do that with people I've worked with as part of Neuheights, and I've had to say, look, I just don't think it's going to work. I've tried to incorporate you, etc., but it's not working. But I always try with a toxic team. Get it out in the open. What's the issue? Can we resolve it? If we can, great. If we can't, there's always a last resort, and we have to look at it. It's part of being a CEO. It's part of the job where I don't like. I don't like the hiring and firing, because it's like one of my friends said. He said, "You just like a big happy clappy family." I said, "Yeah, I do, because I'm used to a big happy clappy family." And he said, "But you're bringing on people who are just not. They're not even good at it." I said, "Yeah, we can train them." He said, "You say that to everybody." So. The hiring and firing is not me.
but it is interesting you say that, Mohammed, because just talking to a chief people officer earlier today who I was coaching, and he said, I really don't like the hiring and firing. I don't mind the hiring, bringing new people.
I hate the firing.
But he said, I really don't like having these difficult conversations. So particularly there's somebody in my own team, I'm going to have to fire them. Mm-hmm. I'm really very anxious about that, in anticipation of what's to come. As you say, anxiety about the future, depression about the past, being more present. And I found that excellent book by Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix. And his book's called No Rules Rules, which is a great read. And he talks about the keeper test. So if one of the team that you have working for you said they were going to go somewhere else to a rival, would you fight really hard, try and give them more money, time off, sabbatical, whatever it is, work on them, give them some leadership coach to work with them, whatever it might be, to keep them? Or would you let them go and go, good luck, I wish you every success? Because if you've got someone and you think, I'd actually let them go, I wouldn't be too fussed, then why have you got them there in the first place? And he gets rid of those people early rather than wait for the moment to come. And I haven't met many who really like getting rid of people. I've worked for a few psychopaths. I worked for a general who was a psychopath, and he loved beating people up. In fact, not physically, mentally, he'd just destroy them. He made a point, and it was borne out every time I saw him move, and I worked for him. My predecessors, 2 of them had been fired. He made a point of firing 2 people within the first month of his new tenure to teach all the others a lesson. Didn't matter whether they're good. Yeah. And I just can't stand people like that. So he's a psychopath. So, but at the other extreme, normal people like you don't like to do it. And so they avoid it. But the question is, what is it you know now about them that you'll find out in 12 months' time, but you know it already? And if you know it already, what are you waiting for? Yeah. Help them find their happiness elsewhere.
It's true. So when I started off Neuheights, I just wanted to be chief science officer. And I said, I'll give the reins to somebody else. And after 4 months, I realized that this somebody else was wholly inadequate. So I couldn't really fire him because we only had a concept. So I said, you know what? I'm leaving. And I left. And he said, well, if you leave, we haven't got a business. But the problem is, you've been here for 4 months. I can't see any investment. I can't see any plans. I have no idea what we're doing, and I have no idea the direction. We have to do a parting of the ways. We have to do that. And I realized that I'm a reluctant leader. I'm a very reluctant leader. It's not something that I go out looking for power. I don't like power junkies. I'm not into that. I'm not into adrenaline junkie. I'm not into any of that. But what I found was in the few teams that I've been part of as a startup, if I try and just cruise along, it comes to a grinding halt. And I've realized, I thought, right, you know what? I can't do this elongated death. I've got to either step up or step out. That's why I look at it. Step in or step out. Step out means just leave, because you're just going to get frustrated. And that's why with Nueheights, we had a conversation, and I said, you know that the CEO's role is up for grabs, right? Does anybody want it? And everybody voted, no, you should have it. I went, on what basis? Well, you know the business, you know where to get investment, and you know what you're doing. Fine. All right, crack on. That's the only time I've actually been voted in as a CEO. Even when I've done co-founding, I've never yearned for it. I've ended up doing it, but never yearned for it. And I think that's the best type of leader, the one who doesn't yearn for power. I mean, what am I going to get? I've only got 4 other people. What am I going to be? I'm not going to be building I'm not building a conglomerate.
No, it's a very wise bit of advice. Okay, now you get advice from all over the place, but often all leaders are readers, but not all readers are leaders. Is a lovely saying, which I fully agree with. And in the reading that you've done in the last 12 months, what books or what one book would you recommend on leadership that you'd recommend to others that you found very helpful?
On leadership, so I put it down. So on leadership, the one book that I read, but not from a military background. It's not that. I just want to know the plans and the strategy. It has to be The Art of War. Has to be The Art of War. Sun Tzu's Art of War is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Even when you think you're outnumbered, outgunned, his vision was always go as if you're the upper hand, always. And I realized that from when I started doing going for investment. I realized, I thought, oh, hold on a minute. I shouldn't be going with the lower hand. I should be going with the upper hand, saying, if you don't invest, you're going to miss out, because this thing is worth X. And I've already positioned it to these companies in the US and all the rest of it. And it was brilliant. And because whenever I've seen people going for investment, they always go with a lower hand. Oh, please, 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 give me this. Oh, please, please, otherwise I'll die. In reality, it should be the other guy. Oh, I'll invest. Come on, where do I sign? So that one's a brilliant one. On characters, I love history. I love history. I love my ideal job when I retire would be a curator in a museum, because I'd meet people all day long and I could tell them about beautiful stories. But the one character that I've read, which was fascinating, was not many people know about it. Tariq bin Zaid.
Okay.
Tariq bin Zaid is where we get the term Gibraltar, and Gibraltar in Arabic means the mountain of Tariq. Now, why do I like this? It's because he never lost a battle. Outnumbered, outgunned, doesn't matter. And the one thing that I do like was one of his statements was when the Moors landed in Spain, he burnt the ships. No going back. That's it. When I read that was when just before I made my decision 2017. No going back. We're done. It's a chapter. It was good. We move on. And that's what I love about that. From a mental health, one of the best books I've ever read about trauma and how to deal with trauma and how to realize you're suffering from trauma is a book by Peter Levine, and it's called Waking the Tiger. And that book was really good because it said there are 90% of the population will freeze like the deer in the headlights, just freeze. It knows the car's coming, it will just stop. Same with when the antelope is being chased by the lions, it'll just stop and play, and that's it. I'm giving up. The one that played dead and then had a gap when the lions released the jaws and it was gone, they're the survivors. And it's beautiful. It's about when we have a trauma, not only do we mentally feel it, but we physically feel it. So those who see traumatic things, and I've had to do some really weird things, put some guy's arm together because he got amputated off because he got sliced. And everybody's just watching it. You have to do something, otherwise you'll live the trauma later on in life. If you see an accident, you have to do something, otherwise you'll live the trauma, because you'll think, I wish I could have done this. And that's part of the trauma. So what Peter Levine says is that 10% of the ones who do things, in a burning house, they're the ones who go in and try and pull somebody else out. I'm not saying go and do it, but do something. Otherwise, the trauma will sit and it will stay there. And it's like a glitch in the software. It's hard to move past it. So that's a brilliant book.
No, I'm looking forward to that. Okay. And then we're at the nice end of our session, and this has been really great, Mohammed. Really enjoyed it. So let's end with, if you just introduce yourself again, because this is going to stand in its own rights, be part of this, but it'll also stand in its own rights. So just tell people who you are, what you do, and what your Nueheights is about. And then just your 2-minute top tip, a leadership tip that's practical that people can take with themselves. So you might have mentioned it already, doesn't matter if you have.
Hi, so I'm Mohammed Khan. I'm the CEO of Nueheights. Nueheights is one of the first nutraceutical companies here in the UK, and we will be expanding into the US and Europe. We make those products which are between supplements and pharmaceutical. So I give you an example. That is something like vitamin D, vitamin C. And what we do is we make them far more absorbable in the body because we put them into a little packet that the body thinks is friendly to it, and it gets absorbed. Top tip. If I had to give it to myself when I was younger or to anybody out there, be kind to others. Literally, be kind to others. You don't know what trauma they're going through. You have no idea. There is no such thing as a bad child. They've gone through a trauma. There is no such thing as having somebody they all say, oh, that was contrary to his character. He never does that. There's something going on. Ask him. So be kind. That's the first one I would say. Be kind. Enjoy the journey. Don't always look at the end part. Enjoy the journey. There are people on that journey who you'll meet who will make the goal far more easy to obtain. So enjoy the journey. In the past, I've been guilty of not enjoying the journey. Just objectives. Enjoy the journey because you'll learn a lot from that. And the other one is just stay focused. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was working in a company in Chicago, and my CEO would say, when we focus, we win. And I would meet him in the corridor when I was in the Chicago office. And he'd ask me, he said, oh, Mohammed, what are you working on? And I go, well, and he'd just walk off. I think, what the hell kind of person is that? How rude is that? And he did this a couple of times. As soon as I'd talk, he'd walk off. And then he cornered me once at the coffee bay, or the coffee area. And he said to me, what are you working on? And I went, oh, I'm working on. And he said, I'm going to walk off again. I said, yeah, I've noticed that. You just walk off. Why do you do that? He said, because you're not giving me what you're doing in a laser focused manner. Mm. Because you haven't understood it. That's why you're giving me the waffle to me as well. Yeah. So your team's giving you waffle, and you're giving waffle to me. Oh. And I remember, I realized that, and then the next time he caught me in the corridor, he said to me, what are you working on? I said, we're working on a new investment where we're going to raise about 1.4 million, and then from that 1.4 million, we're going to raise a company that's going to do 100 million in 3 years' time. He went, now you've got it. He said, I'm not bothered about the rest of the rubbish. I'm not bothered.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And
thank you for
Mohammed,
your time.
Stay on. Thank you for your tips and your wisdom. Much appreciated.
Thank you.